Welcome to the 2017-2018 Poetry Out Loud Teachers Webinar for the state of New Hampshire. I am Julianne Gadori. I'm the Arts Education Coordinator for the New Hampshire State Council on the Arts. And we also have Caitlin Delaney, who is the Poetry Out Loud Coordinator who works with us at the Arts Council. She's not with us today, but she has been emailing all of you about the program. So the goal of today's webinar is just to give you more information about Poetry Out Loud in New Hampshire, how it's implemented both at the school, the regional, state, and national levels, and for you to know more about resources that are available to assist you with your program. And I wanted to start by showing you a video that we produced last year about Poetry Out Loud in New Hampshire.
My name is Charlotte Perkins, and I love that during Poetry Out Loud, you have the opportunity to sort of explore people. Like in the span of 45 minutes, I get to be a frustrated teacher, I get to be a young woman traveling the world, and I also get to be the Statue of Liberty in Colossus, so I love the variety. About the program, I definitely had different feelings about poetry than I do now. Although I've had a lot of acting experience and a lot of performance experience, I didn't have the same sort of practice performing poetry specifically, and I've learned a lot about how accessible poetry can be.
I feel like when I'm reciting, I'm able to go on autopilot. I don't have to remember anything other than the gestures that I have and the freedom that I get to experience when I'm reciting. It's such a wonderful opportunity to get out of my comfort zone and essentially become someone else. People that organize this are so wonderful, and they do everything in their power to make sure that there's no stress on us and that we're just having a good time.
I've never really had much public speaking experience, but I guess when I'm up there, it seems like I have. Like I didn't have much of an idea of what Poetry Out Loud was until about like November of last year. So this is like my first year doing it, and I was like really surprised about like how many people were involved and like how big it was nationally.
The great thing about Poetry Out Loud is that we get to handpick poems, and we also get to perform them in front of people who seem to love poetry, and also in front of such a large crowd who love to listen. I usually pick poems that are pre-19th century, and usually takes me about a month to learn a poem.
I love the program because it's awesome having a bunch of kids reciting poetry. It just gives the kids another avenue to express themselves and just think about things that they might not have thought about before.
What I love about Poetry Out Loud is that you get to meet a lot of cool people from all over the state, and everyone has different interests, so you're all kind of united by a common love of poetry. It's just, you meet such a unique group of people, and so to come to a place where everyone has this love for poetry, and everyone is so welcoming and so friendly and kind.
So has Poetry Out Loud built my confidence up? I would say it actually did. Like I didn't think it would, just because I've been involved in acting like as long as I can remember. Just coming out here and just seeing a bunch of other people that are not only like acting, but they also just love poetry.
Okay, so that was a brief introduction. You get to see a lot of students from all over the state sharing some of the things they love about Poetry Out Loud. And you saw some logos on there. You saw the New Hampshire State Council on the Arts, possibly the Charitable Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Poetry Foundation. And we know that could be a little confusing as to who is actually organizing and putting together the program. So we want to make sure you know who you're connecting with through email and through the program. So in New Hampshire, Poetry Out Loud is organized by the New Hampshire State Council on the Arts. We are a state agency that works to support the arts and ensure that every citizen can enjoy the cultural, civic, and economic and educational benefits of the arts. And we do that through a variety of grants, programs, services, professional developments to nonprofit cities, towns, and schools. The Arts Council is part of the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. We just merged, and there's a list of those other state agencies that we are happy to be a part of. The curriculum materials and all the resources that you see for Poetry Out Loud are put together by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Poetry Foundation. And we are partners with the National Endowment for the Arts in all of our grants and programs and services. The State Council on the Arts is funded half by the state of New Hampshire and half by the federal government, the NEA. So they are a partner in all of our programming, and they have worked with the Poetry Foundation to create a really amazing group of teaching materials, videos, resources, and the poetry anthology for the Poetry Out Loud curriculum. POL, as you've probably seen, is marketed as a poetry recitation competition, but for those of you who have been doing it, you know it's much more than just a competition. It's really a curricular unit where your students can dig into understanding more about the breadth of poetry throughout history. I think they have poems in the anthology dating from 1400 to present day, and it's a set of teaching materials that help you work with the students to really dig deep into those poems and to work on their public speaking and self-confidence. So it really is much more of a curriculum than just a contest, and it is highly adaptable to whatever you're already doing in your classroom. So we have some students and some teachers in New Hampshire who every class within a school will participate in Poetry Out Loud as part of a poetry unit. And depending on what grade level, the 9th graders might do American poets, and 10th graders may do a certain time period. POL may be done in a certain classroom. It may be done as a club. The curriculum is really adaptable to how you can fit it into what you're already doing in your English language classrooms. In New Hampshire, you can see a map here. This is from last year. We're about to release our map from this year, but we have 43 schools participating, which is a little over 40% of all public, private, and charter schools in the state. So if you ever just want to reach out to someone who maybe a teacher from a similar size school or kind of school as yours, and just have questions about how the program is implemented there, we can connect you with another teacher you can talk with. So as I said, POL really works really well when you're able to do it in every single classroom and have classroom competitions, then school competitions, and have a winner from the school progress on to the regional semifinal events, and then from the semifinals, 4 winners will proceed on to the state finals event. But if that is not possible, that every English class in your school's going to do POL, there's so many different ways you can do the program. As I said before, it could be a club after school. It could be just 9th and 10th grade where the 11th and 12th grade can continue to compete, but they would join in at the school level competition. There's a variety of different ways, but we know and we've seen many times that the more students you can have involved, the greater impact it has on the school culture, where students are really excited to participate year after year, and it becomes something that they look forward to. The teaching resources, I'm going to show you how to access those and how to find those. We have sent you many links to them in email, but you can also find them on the Arts Council's website. And I'm actually going to go to our homepage which is this nh.gov/NHArts. And you can always find the Poetry Out Loud logo here on the right, and this will take you to the POL homepage, and you can click on this current year. And this is where you'll find contact information for Caitlin and I, as well as important links and the most important dates. So if there's something that you need to know that's not on here, just email us or give us a call. And right now I'm going to take you to the National Poetry Out Loud website, which is where you will find the poems that students can select from, as well as teaching resources for you and resources for setting up your school competition. You also will get a teacher's guide, a physical teacher's guide mailed to your school if you haven't already. And that takes you through step-by-step the process of doing it in the classroom, as well as a poster and other great resources. So for you, under the teaching resources, there's teacher preparation. Again, this is some information that's repeated in the teacher's guide, and it's not pages and pages of information. It's really pared down to give you a concise introduction to the program and some lesson plans. So a lot to choose from, things from helping students to select a poem by organizing a scavenger hunt, to doing a tone map with students so they can really dig into the emotions and the tone that they're projecting, both through their body and their voice, and a lot of other exercises here. There's also connections to standards, and there are a lot of videos relating to how Poetry Out Loud is evaluated. So you can share with your students recitation videos that are organized by some of those evaluation criteria. So if your students are trying to understand more about what dramatic appropriateness is, there's videos here, voice and articulation. There's lots of examples which are great for you as a teacher and for your students. Under tips for reciting, here's where all those evaluation criteria are. On the website is also where the students are going to select their poems under Find Poems, and there's a couple different ways those are organized. As you know, your students have to select one poem that's pre-20th century, one poem that's 25 lines or fewer. So those are great ways to search so that they can narrow it down a little bit. And then there's also random poem selection so that your students aren't always, starting with the A's or starting with the, most well-known authors. Or depending on what your unit is and what you're working on, there's different literary forms that you may want to explore. If you're working on metaphor, here's a whole list of poems that are, use metaphor, imagery, alliteration, things like that. And now I'm at the bottom of the page. And the final resource I want to make sure that you're aware of is the Judge's Guide, which is under the competition, under Judge Preparation. And this is an important tool not only for the judges that you're going to have for your school competition, but also for your students, because we want them to know up front what they're going to be evaluated on for the contest, but also for your unit. So on here, you can find the Judge's Guide. And again, like all of the POL materials, they really try to keep it as concise and clear as possible. But they give a really nice, succinct description of what each of those criteria are. Like, what exactly is physical presence? What are we looking for when we say voice and articulation? Things like that. And they also have a rubric. Here's the evaluation sheet so students can see how they're going to be scored. And you can know how they're going to be scored. And this Poetry Out Loud scoring rubric we print out for every judge at the semifinal and the state final levels, so that judges aren't looking at their evaluation sheet like this and wondering, was that a good or an excellent? They can really refer to that rubric. And this is great for your students too, so they can know, am I clear, adequate? Do I have clear and adequate intonation, and even pacing, or how do I move from that to very clear, crisp mastery of rhythm and pace, skillful use of volume and intonation? What are the difference between those categories? So this is a good tool for everyone in the program, for you as a teacher, the student, and the judges. And we're going to go back. So those are some of the resources for you, and that is the Poetry Out Loud website. We also have a link on the Arts Council's website, which I shared with you. Here too, we have a teacher. We have a Poetry Out Loud blog for teachers, and although this is for this year, there's lots of posts from teachers from previous years on how they start teaching the poetry with their students, whether they're doing a scavenger hunt to get them to find the poem, whether they're getting them practicing recitation by having partners, so they are practicing reading out loud with each other every day, and then moving into small groups in the whole class. There's a lot of great teaching resources on here. And then also some teachers will either start a poetry unit or work in some aspect where students are able to write their own poetry, either beforehand or afterwards. So they may start with Poetry Out Loud and then move into where students are writing their own poetry. When you're organizing your school PLL program, just think about how you want to celebrate English language arts in your school, and how Poetry Out Loud can help you do that. So we don't need to tell you that, this is a great opportunity for students to share their diverse talents outside of athletics or other opportunities. It may connect with a group of students that aren't able to be celebrated or show their talents in other ways. Again, if you involve as many classes as possible, it really helps build the excitement school-wide. If you have any English language learners in those populations in your school, or a middle school population, or some kind of community group who may want to also use the curriculum materials, middle school students can't compete and move on to the semifinal level, but they certainly can, the teachers can use the resources. We can give you extra teachers' guides, and they can participate, so they start to see Poetry Out Loud and poetry as just a normal part of their lives, and they can get excitement for when they're in high school. And for ELL classes, the short nature of poetry makes it an excellent opportunity for those students to practice public speaking skills and to dig deep into the context of some of those words. And we're going to talk a little bit about really making that school competition a lot of fun, and figuring out how, again, POL can fit into what your overall school goals are for your English language department. And this year we have the opportunity for poets to visit your school. We have funding supported by the Charitable Foundation and the Putnam Foundation, which is a donor-advised fund, to send accomplished poets into schools at no cost to the school. And I'm going to show you, we sent out an email with the link to this resource, but it is here as well. You can start by, we've put together a list of poets who we've juried and who have been involved in the POL program as possible for a while. And you can review that list, which has their hometown, their contact information, a little bit about their bio. And if there's somebody who looks like they're either near your school or would be a good fit, or you've always wanted to bring Alice Fogel or Mark Palos from Slam Free or Die or S. Stephanie, any of these poets, you can contact them directly, coordinate with them about what time scheduling would be great for them to come, and discuss things like how many students they're going to see, how many classes, what is the workshop theme, and we've given you some suggestions on workshop themes that a local poet could come and do with your class, but you are not limited to the poets listed here or the workshop themes. This is really just a starting place for you. So you coordinate directly with that poet to decide on a time, a theme, and the items, what the goals are for the poet visiting your class. Should the poet, are they going to bring handouts, and how early do you need those if there's any copies that need to be made? Will there be any bathroom breaks? What grade level and how many kids? Those are all the kinds of things that you should discuss. So in order to invite a poet to your school, after you've done that organization legwork, you're going to fill out a form that just tells us your school name, who your Poetry Out Loud coordinator is, who has accepted the invitation to come, and the workshop topic, the date, how many students will participate. And then after the poet visits your school, we're going to ask that you fill out a very, very short evaluation. And so when you first let us know you've invited someone, we're asking you to agree to fill out that evaluation. And what that evaluation does is it gives us a heads up that that visiting poet needs to be paid. So we will pay them directly for that visit. But we, in addition to finding out your feedback on how the workshop went, we would like to pay those poets for generously coming out to the school. So if you have any questions about this opportunity, please let us know. But we're really hoping that every school will be able to bring a local author into the school to really enrich that experience for your students. When you're organizing your school competition, again, try to think about how you can make that a special event for those students. Maybe you are going to have it during the school day because that's when you're most likely going to get most students to attend. Maybe it's going to be after school. Maybe it's going to be in coordination with a sporting event or a musical event or a play. Maybe you're going to have it at a local coffee shop to give it that extra excitement of a special event and really make the kids feel like this is a fun performance opportunity. There's so many different ways you can organize a school competition, but really, again, try to think about how you can connect it with what is already happening at your school, or how can you use this opportunity to make it an exciting experience for the students, but also to showcase to administrators and parents and community members how hard these students have worked, and really how beautiful their recitations are, because every POL performance is really just amazing. And usually people are very moved by it. Here's an example to remember, and we can send this to you. We have a link to it that just when you're setting up your school competition, if you need any help or advice on how to set that up, we've created a diagram for you so you remember that there's should be a prompter right within eye vision of the student that you're going to have 3 to 5 judges, you may have an audience, you may have scorers, all of these different components when you're putting together the competition. I already showed you the judges guide, which is what you are going to share with the judges that you select for your school competition. At the semifinal and state final competitions, we require all judges to come to an in-person training, but it's really up to you to find judges and get them that judges guide early so they have a time to look over what the criteria is, and also hopefully watch a couple of those videos so they can practice recording. For judges, you can have other English teachers from your school participate, or you could use the opportunity to have like a local celebrity, like a police chief or fire chief or a town or school librarian. You may ask an administrator. You may ask a local poet. You want people who will do a good job evaluating the students using the training and the judges guide, but also you can use the opportunity to share with these people, again, the beauty and the amazing work that the students have put in through the English language arts into the program. So it's an advocacy opportunity. It's an opportunity to highlight to your program and administrators English language, which doesn't always get highlighted. And this graphic here on the right, we will be issuing to you soon for this year. That is last year's. But as I said before, after your school competition, you will select the winner to go on to a regional semifinal event. And there's 4 of those events around the state. We have the dates for all of them so far, and we just closed registration. So we are going to start assigning schools to those semifinal venues. Here's a list of important dates, which you can also find on the Arts Council's website. You can email us. The biggest one right now is that you should have your school competition by February 9th, the latest, and that gives us opportunity to print the poems and send links to the poems to our judges for the semifinal events so they can have time to read those poems and prepare in order to judge adequately. From there, we have the semifinal dates, and the state house competition is on March 9th, which is the state finals. So 4 students from every semifinal will move on to the state championship. And at the semifinal competitions, your students will be required to read 3 poems. So if you only have your students memorize and work on reciting 1 poem for the school competition, they're going to have to do that extra work to memorize 3 and to really dig into 3 poems. So you are setting them up for an advantage if you really get them start thinking about learning more than 1 poem at the school competition. It may be 2 poems for the school competition, and that way when they go on to the semifinals, there's not that much extra work that they have to do to pick a 3rd poem. And then at the state finals, all students read 2 poems, and then the highest scoring students move on, and the top 4 recite their 3rd poem. We try very hard to make the semifinal competitions and the state finals a really amazing event for the students and for you as teachers. We have local celebrity judges and MCs. We have a green room for the students so they can feel pampered and excited and have a place to practice and hopefully not get too nervous. The Poetry Society of New Hampshire often donates, along with other local publishers, poetry books for students. We have posters, stickers. The Poetry Society of New Hampshire offers a free 1-year membership, as well as a complimentary membership to Slam Free or Die, which is New Hampshire's slam poetry organization. And every year we also reach out to area colleges to let them know really the amazing amount of work that goes in by the students into these poems and in this work. And often schools will offer scholarships to the winners at the semifinal levels. So that is another incentive for your students. We usually don't get confirmation on which scholarships are being offered until usually around January or February. And that is everything. So if you have any questions, you can visit us online or, again, call or email Caitlin or I. And we would love to come to your school competition. So as soon as you get that scheduled, if you could let us know when that's happening, we'll be happy to visit and have fun. Thank you.